Anyhow, hi everyone, it's Rebecca from the Ridge Road Farm. Let's go into my garden. It is May 29th, it's Memorial Day weekend, and we thought we'd give you guys a little tour of what we've got happening in the garden so far. It's about an acre, which I'm sure seems enormous to some people, but I think a lot of people sort of are under the impression that we farm like 8 or 10 acres, and we don't. We just have this one little garden plot. We just use it efficiently. We've separated it out into a couple of different vegetable beds and an orchard and a vineyard and some space for berry bushes, and that's kind of it. The rest of it we maintain as mowed grass space, and we don't really have to mow it. It makes it look nice, and it is easier to maintain weeds and to keep them down if you don't have weed seeds developing. If you keep your lawn mowed, it helps keep that down. So let's go take a little tour. So we kept an opening in the fence so that we could get the ATV and the lawnmower and things in and out of it without having to open a gate or move a piece of wire or something. So we thought, well, we have this extra cattle panel. So I had seen somebody on a YouTube video use a cattle panel as a trellis, and this is just tall enough so that somebody on the wheeler can get through it. And we plan to plant sweet peas and morning glories. So on either side of the bed, I'm going to plant sweet peas and morning glories, and hopefully by the middle of the summer, those will travel all the way up to the top, and it will be very pleasant to walk underneath. So what you're going to see mostly here is, at this point in time, is perennials. Our main focus for the last couple of years has been to work on establishing fruit trees, fruiting berries, grapes, asparagus, strawberries, the kinds of things that take a while to establish but will return you food perennially, year after year after year. That we put a lot of effort into that, and we're just now kind of getting to working on the vegetable gardens themselves. We did have vegetable gardens our first couple of years, but this year we've really ramped it up. Our first year here, this was the only garden bed. None of the rest of this was here. This was the only garden bed. It was about 12 by 15, and we have expanded it to, I think it's 27 by 18 now, and it's got 4 beds for annuals. And I'll show you what we have going on over here. One of the very first things we put in at the farm was this asparagus and strawberry bed. Asparagus and strawberries work really well together because asparagus have very deep roots and strawberries have kind of shallow roots, and they both take up a lot of space. So it's nice if you can plant them together and they work well together because they don't compete, because they have different root depths. We get a lot of questions about our asparagus and why we're waiting so long to harvest it. I've said a bunch of times on posts on social media that, oh, I'm waiting for the next asparagus, or waiting for the first asparagus in 3 years, and people don't really understand why that would be. When you plant asparagus is a fern. So when you plant asparagus, you plant a crown, and you plant it deep in the soil, and then you allow it to grow for 3 seasons. And so each one of these represents a single asparagus plant. And what needs to happen is that the asparagus needs to grow. And let me show you here. So this is the asparagus that we're all kind of familiar with here, right? Where are we? So this is what we're familiar with. This is the little spear, and this is what you would pick and eat. This represents one plant. This asparagus will grow into this big asparagus fern, and you need to let it do that for 2 or 3 seasons to put energy down into the roots. Otherwise, you'll drain all of the energy that is in the asparagus, and you'll get no asparagus. After about the 5th year, the plant will be tapped out and it will just die. Asparagus that's well cared for and fed and allowed to establish and not crowded should last several lifetimes. You can have beds that your grandmother picked out of, but only if you let it do its asparagus thing. You see here, we've got one that this year has put up a second shoot. And it was very tempting to eat that, but I didn't. I let it be. So our asparagus are doing super, super well. This is Jersey Supreme, I think. And we've got 3 different types of strawberries growing here. I don't know what any of them are. There are labels in here somewhere, but it's, what did I say? It's May 29th, and we have got a ton of fruit set on. So here's a good example. Where are we? Look at this. Look at these. These are going to be gorgeous. A few more rains, and we are going to be right in the strawberry business. So we had a few last year, but we did let the chickens in the garden, and well, then we didn't have any strawberries. So that's what we've got for perennial plantings here. I did put in some early peas. I put in, these are Sugar Ann here. Believe it or not, there are peas here. They did diddly squat. This is Lexington's Progress, which is that is a shelling pea, and I did put in some snow peas over here, and they need some support, and I'll get to that later today, I guess. Most of these are bush peas that don't really need much support, but the snow peas, which is what I have planted on this side, they'll get about 3 feet tall, and they'll get really wiry, and if you don't support them, then they will flop all over the ground. You'll get diseases on your peas, and they just won't be nice. Something that I have been enjoying from the garden, it is early, but my first little nibbles from the garden are actually pea shoots. Not everybody knows, but you can eat these, and they are scrumptious. They taste like a snow pea, and you can just eat them raw. They're delicious. We put them in salads. Oh man, that's so good. Oh. Put them in salads, toss them in stir fries, use them as garnishes. It's a really fun little treat to have. And I know farmers that actually plant just like, they'll plant like a sacrificial row of peas just to be able to harvest them and sell them at market, or harvest them and eat them themselves. So what I have planned for the rest of this garden is I'm going to put a couple of zucchinis in here. We'll probably put some beans in here. Down at the end, I actually have planted some early, I'm doing some experiments with like, how early can you plant brassicas? So I have some purple cabbages here. Nothing super impressive, but I've got some purple cabbage, and over here I have some broccoli in the background there. We'll see. What we've got here on the garden right now is some compost from our earth machines, which is sort of a big tub. It's kind of a static pile for household compostables, and I can talk about that in another video, but it's basically just a home composter. So that's the dark that you see kind of in that, like this area, this dark area, that's the home compost. And then the rest of this is compost from the pig pen. We shovel all of the pig manure and the shavings and things into the bay next to the pigs, and we toss it and let it get wet. And in about a year or so, that makes beautiful compost for us. We don't have enough yet to do this whole farm, but hopefully by the fall we will have. So we're gonna, with any luck, we'll be able to load this right up with compost, and by next spring it will be well fed. Oh, here, that's Mr. Peep in the background. He's very upset if there's too much noise at certain times of day, and he likes to let you know about it. So over here we have Mr. Peep. Over here we have high bush blueberries. 2 of these we had at our old house, and a couple of them we have purchased since coming here. I get a lot of grief from my friends for planting and harvesting high bush blueberries as a native Mainer. I understand your point. There are advantages to, for those of you who don't know, this may be the variety, if you're not from down East Maine, this may be the variety of blueberry that you're used to seeing at like maybe a U-pick situation, is this sort of tall, bushy thing. This plant is maybe 3 feet tall. It will get 5 feet tall and maybe twice as big. Blueberries come in high bush like this and low bush varieties, and low bush varieties are what you see in blueberry barrens. And as a native Mainer, I am supposed to die on the hill of only eating low bush blueberries, and that anything from that's a high bush blueberry is from New Jersey, and well, we just don't. Anyhow, I think that's a load of rubbish. I like high bush berries because they ripen earlier, they have bigger fruit, they're easier to pick, and you get a lot of fruit in a concentrated area. Also, because of the way that you maintain low bush berries, basically you prune them every other year to keep the vines supple and so that they're easy to rake and they're more prolific and a whole bunch of other reasons. You only get a harvest every other year. Low bush blueberries are really just, they're a lot more maintenance. I do think they taste better, but that's a whole argument for another day. So right now we have 4. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. The plan is to plant like maybe 3 more in this area, and that should net us all of the blueberries we could ever want to eat. So we have, I don't remember, Rob is better at this, but we have kind of a lower variety. We have, I think this is Duke. This puts out tons and tons and tons of like giant berries. You can see how big the flower blossom is. And that will put out a berry maybe twice the size of that, which, I mean, anyway, yeah, I like high bush blueberries. That's why I grow them. That's the end of it. This is the Vineyard. This is probably one of the things we get asked the most questions about. It's sort of the most exciting to people. We put the Vineyard in the first year right after we put in the asparagus and the strawberry bed. I have 4 varieties. This first one here is Sabravois. That's a Canadian variety. These 2 in the middle are, on the right here is Frontenac, which is a red. Sabravois is also a red. And Frontenac Gris, which are white grapes. Frontenac and Frontenac Gris are a University of Minnesota hybrid, and they are the same. It's just that one has kind of a grayish skin and the other has a reddish, dark, like a purple black skin. The last one is L'Acadie Blanc, and L'Acadie Blanc is a variety grown very commonly in Nova Scotia. So I picked that because I figured it would do, if it does well in Nova Scotia, then it should do well here. Sabravois is grown commonly, that's the one in the last row, is grown commonly in Quebec. So I figured if it can make it in Quebec, and if it can make it in Minnesota, and if it can make it in New Brunswick, it can probably make it here. Most of these varieties are good down to like minus 20 degrees Celsius, which I hope it never gets that cold here. So they should survive anything that a Maine winter can throw at them. You can grow grapes well in New England. You just can't grow most of the typical varieties that you might see in, California or your grocery store. You can't just plant Cabernet or Chardonnay or Merlot. It's too cold here. They won't grow. So we have hybrids of a different grape that we grow here that are cold hardy. Something I get asked a lot about are these blue tubes. These are grow tubes. They're from a company called Bluex, and essentially what they do is they, first and foremost, they help train the vine. So you can see that I do have this staked, but this is not the vine is not tied to this. This is holding this blue tube straight. So what happens is the grapes grow straight up through this little tube, and then they make it to your top wire, which you will have to use your imagination for. We'll eventually have a top wire that will go from one end to the other, and then a second wire. But this helps the grape grow nice and tall and straight up to that first wire without needing to tie it to anything. So that's first. So it's a plant support. Second of all, it's plant protection, and it helps protect the little plants that are tender from windburn, from cold scald. And according to the company, there's something, fancy and magical about this plastic that filters in just a certain spectrum of light, and that blue light is supposedly very good for growth. And as you can see, this is the second year of growth on these plants, and they have already popped up through the top. They're very, very vigorous and happy and shiny. And so if you compare that to this guy over here, this poor little sad plant, the tube for this one blew off in the middle of the winter sometime, and I was too lazy to get it. It's in the woods somewhere. I hope my neighbors don't find it and aren't mad at me. But this plant is like, I don't know, 12 inches tall. It's the exact same variety as every other vine in this row. But if I take the tube off of this plant, again, this is the same variety. Like, here's my sad little pathetic plant. And then there's this huge plant. So you can see how much more growth and how vigorous this is. So after we installed the vineyard, our next focus was to establish an orchard. We're very fortunate here that there are already established apple trees. My family's been on this farm since the turn of the 20th century, the early 1900s. And there are apple trees here that are probably nearly that old. So we're very fortunate that we didn't have to plant any apples. There are wonderful eating apples here. There are wonderful cider apples. There's a beautiful crab apple for jelly. So we were able to focus our efforts in the orchard to just the other fruits that we really like. So we have cherries, we have peaches, we now have plum cherries, and we have an apricot. So this, and I don't remember any of the varieties, so you're just gonna have to bear with me. I think one of them is Reliance, and this is, anyway, all right, never mind. I'll just find out what the varieties are and I'll list them in the comments section. But we have 2 peaches, which did give us peaches last year. I don't know if we'll get many this year. We didn't get a ton of flower set on them. We did have bees, but like that's kind of it. Like, they're beautiful pink flowers, but there were maybe a dozen flowers on this tree. So hopefully we'll get some peaches. This is a beautiful, beautiful apricot, and apricots are self-pollinating. Almost all apricots in the universe of apricots are self-pollinating, except this one. But that was very frustrating. We got this one home and we didn't bother to see if it was self-pollinating or not, and it is not self-pollinating. It requires a different variety, and the entire gardening industry has decided that no one sells apricots anymore. So in the springtime, we have a very beautiful tree and no fruit. So if you have an apricot that is, I think, moon glow or a moonlark or something like that, that's supposed to be a very good pollinator, call me. I need a piece of your tree, because otherwise I will never get any apricots. This is a new addition to our little orchard. This is a Tokia plum. It's known as the bubblegum plum, I believe, where a lot of plums, I'm not a huge plum fan because they tend to be too sour for me, but this plum supposedly is extremely sweet. So we'll see. Hopefully that proves to be true, and we'll get some beautiful sweet plums Maybe not this year, but next year, hopefully. We do have an empty space in our orchard over here. I thought about putting another apricot, should I ever find another bloody apricot, over here, but it gets a little bit wet. You can see it's sort of swampy over here. And most fruit trees don't like wet feet, so I think I might put an elderberry there instead. Moving over here, this is a little Stella cherry. It got chewed pretty hard by the deer last year, so I don't know. I'm not sure we're going to get much for fruit out of it this year. We're just going to let it grow. But hopefully in a couple of years, that one will put on a bunch of fruit for us. This guy, on the other hand, I have to go look at the tag because I always get it wrong. This is a Meteor sour cherry. And it's supposedly the fruit on it looks like, you know, if you were to draw two cherries tied together like everybody does, this is like it's your classic cherry. And look at the fruit set. Oh my God, I'm so excited. It's even starting to form little bitty cherries. Like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I can't wait. I really hope this is super, super, super prolific and that the birds don't eat it all. The flowers aren't very pretty right now because all the petals have blown off, but I did see bees and we did have pollinators, so fingers crossed. This over here is a really interesting variety. This is a plum cherry, which I'd never heard of. What is it called? This is a compass plum cherry, or cherry plum. I guess it's a hybrid between a cherry and a plum. So cherries are not self-fertile. They also need a pollinator, a different variety of, plums are not self-pollinated, they're self-fertile, so they do need another variety. But this particular one, because it's a hybrid between a plum and a cherry, can actually be pollinated by, I think it was Nanking cherries. So it's relevant anyway because we have that second plum, but I thought that was really interesting. We needed two plums, so we bought this one because we thought it was interesting and it was a nicely shaped tree, and it will be a pollinator for the other plum that we have. So I'm really interested in this one. Supposedly it puts on little fruits that are maybe about like a little bit, maybe $50 sized, and they're sort of pinkish blush, and they're supposed to be really good in jams and that kind of thing. So we'll have to check back with us maybe July, I guess, July, August. I'm not sure exactly when they fruit, but we'll see. All right, the final stop on our perennials tour are our raspberry beds. These just went in this year. We have two different varieties. We have Royalty Purple and August Red. One of them is a summer bearing and one of them is an everbearing, and I don't remember which is which, but basically a summer bearing bears on second year canes, so they grow a cane one year and the next year that cane puts on fruit, and then the other one is an everbearing, which means that it puts fruit on this year's growth. These came really early in the spring and we did not have the bed prepared, and I let them languish in the box from Fedco in my basement for a really, really, really long time. So they're doing okay. Some of them have hooked in, some of them haven't. One of them came as plugs and the other one came as bare rooted canes, which was this one. And look, I don't know a ton about planting raspberries, and I believe that what I should have done was, instead of planting this whole thing here, I should have cut it off like right here and planted the cane like just with this much exposed. But they were languishing in my basement, and the ones that showed any sign of life, like this little sprit of a bud here, it won't focus, but anyway, I just was like, you know what, this is what we call the plant and pray method, where you're just like, well, you're alive, I'm going to put you into the world and bless you and wish you good luck and hope you live. So that's kind of where we're at with raspberries right now. These guys came, we planted these second. Most of them are doing okay. Some of them aren't showing much signs of life at all, but these ones came as plugs. And as you can see, this guy, he may be little, but he be fierce. They've only been in the ground maybe a week or so, and they're doing pretty good. Most of them have some sort of growth, so I'm hopeful that next year that they'll survive the winter and they'll all come back and they'll be beautiful canes. We will put up a trellis system for them, and trellising for raspberries isn't to support the plant, it's just kind of to keep them upright so they're easier to pick. So stay tuned for raspberry updates. I will let you know if they live or if they die. That's farming. And last but not least is our vegetable garden. I call this the production garden, where I kind of refer to the smaller, the quote smaller 27 by 18 garden as the kitchen garden. That's where I would plant things like the peas that you saw that I might just go out and grab for dinner. I would plant zucchini in there, some lettuces, some spinach, that kind of thing. So stuff that I might just go and harvest little bits off of here and there, some herbs. That's what I'm gonna plant in the kitchen garden. This, on the other hand, is our production garden, and its main function is to grow us as many tomatoes and hot peppers as we can possibly grow out of it, because we can a lot of that stuff. We make a lot of pickled jalapenos, a lot of cowboy candy, a lot of spaghetti sauce, some salsa. We also grow a lot of corn. We grow a lot of green beans, and we can all of that as well. So there's nothing really exciting to see here right at the moment, because as I said earlier, it is only May 29th and is a little bit too early to put out much in the way of annuals. We will have corn over here in this row. These are cattle panels that we will be planting our tomatoes underneath. We'll have a couple of rows of hot peppers. There are actually potatoes planted already in this row. We can go and take a look at those. But there's potatoes planted in that row. Here will be green beans probably. Here will be more green beans. And way down at the end here are our onions and garlic. So in this bed, I have a bunch of shallots planted. And in the bed back here, you can see this whole row is planted with red and yellow onions. Some of them are storage, some of them are not. But we're still experimenting with onion varieties here. We haven't settled on any that we specifically love. And it's kind of the same story with garlic. I love planting garlic because you plant it in the fall and then you forget about it and it comes up all by itself, and it makes you look like you have amazing things in your garden without really doing any work. And this is a little bit weedy, but we have Georgia Crystal, Music, and Iberica or Iberico Red. I can never remember the name of that. Planted here. We're still trying to decide how much garlic is the right amount of garlic for us. We have garlic left over from last year, so I feel like maybe this is too much. So if you're a garlic lover, you might want to hit me up at the end of the summer, because I might have some left over. So there you have it. That was our first ever tour of the Ridge Road Farm Gardens. We hope that you enjoyed it, and we hope to bring you more over the course of the summer. The sun is getting kind of high in the sky, and I'm a ginger, and as most of you know, if a ginger stays out in the sun too long, they spontaneously burst into flames. So I should get inside before that happens and get to editing this video. Birds! Birds. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for encouraging us in all of the farming things we do. We really love all of your interest. So we appreciate you, and hopefully we'll be back a little bit later this summer. Stay tuned. Thanks a lot.